So let's start. So hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. So it's a general webinar about the fourth call launched by the Biodiversa Plus partnership. This call focuses on biodiversity and transformative change, BiodivTransform. So before starting, I would like to introduce the speaker. So there is myself, Céline Villiers. I am a package leader in Biodiversa Plus, and I am part of the call secretariat. I am based at ANR, the French National Research Agency. There are also two of my colleagues from ANR. There is Orchi César. She is part of the operational team in Biodiversa Plus, and she's also part of the call secretariat. And there is my colleague Sophie German, who is here today for technical support, and she is operational manager for research and monitoring Biodiversa Plus. There are also Magnus Tannerfeld, who is Biodiversa Plus co-chair, based in Formas in Sweden. And there is also Frédéric Lemaitre, who is operational manager for society and policy impact in Biodiversa Plus, and he is based at IFRB in France. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I will present today, I will give you an overview of the program. So I will give you some technical illustration, and then my colleague Magnus will give you an overview about Biodiversa Plus. And then there will be 3 thematic sessions. So the first one will focus on the scientific content of the call. This part will be followed by a Q&A session, a question and answer session. Then we will have a second part about the types of projects funded and some useful resources. So Frédéric and I will present this part. And finally, we will focus on the call process and eligibility rules. And at the end of these 2 parts, we will have 20 minutes to answer to your question. And finally, we will conclude this webinar. So before starting, I would like to tell you that all what we are going to say today is available on the Biodiversa Plus website. So especially, we would like to encourage you to read and consult the call documents. So in the call documents, the first part is on the call text. Then you have the proposal application form and full proposal application form. It's only for information because you need to submit your proposal and full proposal on the EPSS platform. You can also use the checklist for applicants. You have the data policy. You have more information and details about the assessment criteria. And you have also a document about conflict of interest. So we really encourage you to go to consult these call documents on our website. On our website, you have also an updated list of funding organizations and all the rules from these funding organizations. So you should consult this document before applying to the call. And finally, on our Biodiversa Plus website, you have also an FAQ with some common questions that we can receive as call secretariat. So here you will find many information, and we would like to encourage you to go to read it. So this webinar is recorded, and the replay will be available online in the next few days. And you will be also able to download the slide. The audio is only available for the speaker today, but you can use the Q&A function on Zoom to ask your questions. So we might not be able to answer all the questions. There are many participants today. And also, please ask questions only related to the part that was presented, which is the work. And finally, also, we would like to let you know that if you have questions which are directly relevant to the funding organization, please contact the funding organization contact point. As call secretariat, we cannot answer them. So I will let the floor to Magnus, and he will present you what is Biodiversa Plus.
Thank you very much, Céline. And I do apologize for my voice today. My name is Magnus Tannerfeld. I'm one of the 3 co-chairs of Biodiversa Plus, And I will start with a quick introduction of what the partnership is and who we are to launch this call. And then we'll get into the topics of the BiodivTransform call. So Biodiversa Plus is the European Biodiversity Partnership, co-funded by the European Commission under Horizon Europe. And our aim is to support excellent research on biodiversity with an impact for policy and society at the same time. This is a 7 years program, started now 3 years ago. If I can have the next slide, please. And we are a network of national partners, research ministries, funding organizations, ministries for the environment, environmental protection agencies, and a few more. All funding agencies or ministries or government authorities or regional authorities. We do not have research performing organizations within the Biodiversa Plus network. So we are here to support research. We have in total 81 partners from 41 countries, and you can see the geographical spread there on the map. It's primarily Europe, but we also have very important partners from Africa and associated collaborators from Brazil, Quebec, Ivory Coast, and Taiwan. Next slide, please. So we have a rather broad portfolio of activities in addition to the calls for research proposals. And on the wheel on the right-hand side, you see the research proposals are part of the supporting to research and innovation programs and projects, but we also support policy interactions and policy decision-making support. We have a work stream focusing on the global aspects of biodiversity. We have one work stream focusing on nature-based solutions and evaluation of biodiversity in the private sector. And last, but certainly not least, we have a large work stream working to help harmonize and promote biodiversity monitoring across countries in Europe and beyond. And when it comes to the research calls, we have in total for Biodiversa Plus planned 6 research calls, 1 per year basically. And each of these are in the order of 40 or even more million euros per call, and we aim to fund 30 to 35 projects per call. Next slide, please. And we have a strategy when it comes to all of this, and you can download it from the website, biodiversa.eu. And we have a number of topical themes on biodiversity protection, biodiversity restoration, transformative change, and the global actions, including connections to the Intergovernmental Panel, IPBES, and so on. And we have one cross-cutting theme on promoting knowledge on biodiversity and its dynamics, and that includes the research, but also the biodiversity monitoring. And another cross-cutting theme is then on nature-based solutions. And underpinning all of this, we have a lot of work promoting stakeholder engagement and open science and communication. Next slide, please. And of course, we do not live alone in this world. It's a very complex and ever-increasing landscape of organizations, networks, research networks, EU-based organizations, etc., and funding collaborations. You can see some of them here, and we also in particular collaborate closely with the other European partnerships on animal health, water security, blue economy, urban transition, etc. We now have also agroecology and forestry partnerships developing. Next slide, please. Yes, with this, I think we can move straight into the content and the topics of this call on biodiversity and transformation for biodiversity. Now, the context is that there are a number of anthropogenic direct and indirect drivers of biodiversity loss, and we have the interdependent crisis of biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution. And this is coupled with rather large knowledge gaps concerning biodiversity itself and its interdependence with society. We also have a lack of evidence-based policies. And there are also a number of inefficient or maybe even counterproductive policies and actions, even though they might be aiming at mitigating challenges related to biodiversity in ecosystems. So the overall objective of the call is to understand trade-offs and cross-linkages between the worldwide crisis and to identify, analyze, and comprehend transformation processes that may halt and reverse biodiversity decline. Next slide, please. So just very quickly on a complex topic, and that is the definition of transformative change. And for this call, we have adopted the IPBES definition, which you can read there. It's on the system-wide reorganization across technological, economic, and social factors, including the paradigms, goals, and values needed for conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. And in the call text, you will find a whole section dealing with this and discussing the concept of transformative change. But we won't go into the details of the definitions at this point. Next slide, please. So in short, first of all, the whole call has a clear focus on biodiversity. And what we want is for it to generate knowledge and new levels of ambition and enable new agents of change, going beyond business as usual or just upscaling. We want to ensure that integrated actions for biodiversity, clean environment and climate are equitable, sustainable outcomes for society, while mitigating perceived trade-offs between the different crises and conflicting goals. Hopefully, we will move towards transforming the root causes and changing structures of society that are needed in order to promote biodiversity health and ecosystem health. We want to include pluralistic values and general principles on human rights, justice, anti-discrimination, freedom, and so on. And an overarching goal is to strengthen collaborations between research communities, decision makers, and different social or societal initiatives on justice and other topics. Next slide, please. To look into the details of the research priorities, please read carefully the call documents. That cannot be stressed enough. We do not, this time around for this call, have themes or sub-themes for the call. So in that sense, it's perhaps a bit more bottom-up or open for you to define the problems and topics of your proposals. The projects have to demonstrate academic excellence with and potential for societal and policy impact. So connecting these different aspects for transformative change. We do not define the starting point of that generation of knowledge, but we aim for the call to have a holistic approach with a clear view to societal transformation, in addition to the biodiversity aspects. Next slide, please. Now, I will just quickly mention some of the knowledge gaps that have been identified and are stated in the call text. But some of them are about understanding the key drivers and causes of biodiversity loss, the need for a systems approach to biodiversity positive transformative change, to understand the strengths and weaknesses of transformative change in comparison to stepwise incremental changes, an analysis of the global telecoupling and biodiversity footprints across the globe, a better understanding of the role for transformative change in reversing negative feedback loops in the nexus of biodiversity loss and its primary drivers, to integrate an analysis of the role of various societal aspects in addressing the losses of biodiversity and ecosystem functions, and an analysis of economic paradigms, practices, and financial models could also be included. Next slide, please. A few more. Identifying trade-offs and co-benefits of the different goals, as well as means to reconcile conflicts around biodiversity and nature's contributions to people, ecosystem services, fully acknowledging the interconnectedness between people and biodiversity at different scales. The temporal scales, the trade-offs between short-term, long-term needs and goals, modeling of actual implementation and what that means for biodiversity and for people, the governance needed to achieve it, and who might gain and suffer from effects of such change, with special attention to marginalized and vulnerable groups, I should add. You might also want to evaluate business as usual scenarios and the risks associated to not perpetrating transformative change in action, and or research on how variations in the structure and mission of different funding sources in organizations involved in conservation affect their impact on policy and practice in conservation. Next slide, please. And I will also just mention, so these are some examples of knowledge gaps that can be addressed in this call. You do not need to cover it all, of course. What is important to understand is that the research projects can take part or cover, in terms of topics, all parts of the world in all realms and environments and ecosystems. Note, however, that there may be restrictions at the level of the funding agency, so you need to carefully check the national annexes of the funding organizations that you will be targeting. So wherever you come from, there will be a funding organization that would be where you would be eligible for funding, and you need to check that you are in fact following their rules and regulations. And if you are a coordinator of a whole consortium, you need to take extra care to make sure that the partners that you involve are in fact eligible to the funding, so that your whole consortium in the end will be eligible for funding. The projects have to demonstrate transnational added value, and these are things that we will come back to later. Academic excellence and novelty, and the potential for societal and policy impact. We know that these are 3-year projects. You will not change the world in that time, but depending on what you are targeting and what your ambitions in the project are, the societal and policy aspects have to be included. They should be interdisciplinary, integrating approaches and skills of various sciences, social science, natural sciences, humanities, technical sciences, and in as far as possible, transdisciplinary and cross-sectoral to involve non-academic stakeholders. So that is in short. I think that is my last slide for now. Yes. That was a very quick overview. Again, please read the call documents carefully. But now we have some time for questions. And
yes, I'm searching some questions related to the context, because there are like a lot of questions related to the evaluation process and the composition of the funding organization. So it will be addressed afterwards.
Yes, exactly. So we will.
So there are not many questions on the call text. I'm just checking.
I see one question, why the call requires a systems approach. No, that is not required. That is one of the possible angles you could have. But of course, if you are looking at societal transformation, you should probably go beyond a very narrow scope in the questions that you address. But you do not need to have a full systems sciences approach in your project. I hope that answers that question.
There's also a question, can an applied research project be eligible and targeting to the specific question?
And targeted to specific, yes. Yes, it can. Of course, you need to demonstrate that there is a transnational added value. We'll come back to that later. But yes, and the applications, the projects, they can go, basically across the spectrum from rather basic science to very applied science. But you need to demonstrate the academic excellence in the project as well. So it's, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Magnus. Maybe there is one or two more additional questions. So it's concerning interdisciplinarity, but maybe you are addressing it a bit later. No? Oh, okay, so maybe we can answer this now. Must all branches, it means natural sciences, social sciences, humanities, technical sciences, be covered by the project team?
No, they do not. I mean, you don't need to include everything, but the approach should be interdisciplinary. So if you restrict yourself to one very narrow sector, I think you will find it hard to argue that you are addressing societal transformation at a larger scale. So these are, I mean, we are looking for rather large international consortia, and the group and this transdisciplinarity or interdisciplinarity regards the consortium as a whole. So it's not like every project partner has to cover everything. That's for sure. And if technical aspects are not part of what you try to do, then you should not include that. So depending on the questions that you ask and the types and methods that you will be applying, you should address, but you should include the disciplines that are relevant to address the questions that you are formulating.
Okay, thanks. Maybe there is some link with this other question, so that I am asking you, to what extent do the proposals need to cover multiple sectors? So in brackets, cross-sectoral. Can we also make the difference in one sector?
Yes, I would say so. So, but don't shy away from going across sectors. But I mean, again, it depends on the type of question that you are addressing. So if you are addressing, I'm not going to give any examples, but a specific sector, but there is a transnational added value to this and a societal transformation aspect, then you don't need to include sectors that you don't see are relevant for the questions that you are asking.
Okay, thanks, Magnus. Maybe one or two more questions related to the call text. Do the indirect connections to biodiversity need to be demonstrated?
Sorry, could you repeat?
Yes, sure. Do the indirect connections to biodiversity need to be demonstrated?
The relevance for biodiversity certainly has to be demonstrated, because if there is a project which is not clearly focused on addressing biodiversity issues, it doesn't fall within the Biodiversa Plus realm. So that is like a prerequisite. Yes.
Okay, thanks. Well, there is like more technical question. Is using eDNA a priority?
I'm not going to talk about priorities in that sense, but eDNA, depending on the question again, of course, but if that is highly relevant, for sure. I mean, those tools and methods are in some cases crucial or could be very relevant to address questions at a larger scale, perhaps to upscale the monitoring of biodiversity.
Thanks a lot. Maybe one last question. Similarly, it was asked if agroecology was mentioned, but not clearly already part of the alliance's priorities of that is for the future.
Sorry, I'm not sure
I can copy paste it in the chat. Agroecology was mentioned, but not clearly already part of the alliance's priorities of that is for the future.
Okay. Well, from Biodiversa Plus, I mentioned that there is a partnership on agroecology, which is developing as we speak. And there will always be overlap with the other partnerships, for example, or topics that are also covered by other calls and so on. And we are not delineating, so saying that there is an outer border. But of course, if your main focus is on the agroecology, maybe this is not the call for you. But if your main focus is on biodiversity in the agroecology sector, for sure, that is included, as with forestry or the marine realm, for example. So biodiversity and societal transformation, if that is well covered in focus, then you could work across the sectors, across the different ecosystems and so on.
Last question, and I think we can move on. Please confirm successful project must have to address both parts of the goal, biodiversity and transformative change, or project can focus only on one of them.
I can confirm that, yes, the call is about transformative change in the context of biodiversity. So they must both be clearly addressed. That is the core of this call, indeed.
Okay, thanks, Magnus. I think we can move on to the next section, unless you are telling me that we can continue. So, Magnus, I invite you to, if you can, to answer some of the remaining questions in the call text in the Q&A. I also remind you that the only way to ask your questions is to put them in this Q&A box. And as announced by my colleague Celine, we won't be able to address all of them because there are like so many, and you are like more than 900 participants. So thanks for your understanding.
Yes, I can also add that I see now quickly we have 120 questions already in the chat here. We will try to address as many as possible, but a lot of them seem to be on things that we will be taking up rather soon as well, and that includes the regional scope or how do you know which countries are included in the call, for example, and who is eligible. So that will be addressed, and the real answers, the detailed answers, you will find in the call texts and the national annexes of the funders. So thank you for now.
Thank you. So I will continue and I will present you the types of projects funded and the with my colleague Frederic, we will also speak about some useful resources that you can use. So first, I would like to explain you how a joint call works. Next slide, please. Thank you. So there are several funding organizations who join their forces and they agree to participate to a call. So there's a BiodivTransform call. They have a reserve budget. They put some money on the table, and in addition, there is some money from the European Commission. So what is very important to understand is that each funding organization will fund their own research team. So, for example, ANR, the French National Research Agency, will fund only the French research partner, and it's the same for Italy, for Spain, etc. And so together they agreed, all the funding organizations agreed to be part of one joint call, and that means that your proposal and your full proposal will be evaluated by one single evaluation committee. They will be in charge of making a single ranking list, and the funder will need to strictly follow the ranking list made by the evaluation committee. So the goal will be to fund the best top project and as many as possible projects. And there is no national pre or post selection made by the funding organizations. The funding organizations are in charge only to check the eligibility of the pre and full proposal. They are not doing any evaluations, only the role of the evaluation committee. So I can give you now some average numbers. So Biodiversa Plus would like to fund medium-sized projects. That means that on average, the overall budget is between 1.2 to 1.5 million euros per project. It's only on average because it will depend on the numbers of partners. It will also depend on the objective of your project. Also, on average, there are 6 partners from different countries, but here again, it's only an average. But what is important, it's minimum 3 partners from different countries. That's an eligibility criteria, and my colleague Orshi will get back on that. So Biodversa Plus projects are a good opportunity to be part of a bigger transnational research project and to join forces with other teams. So, for example, on this slide, you have an example where you have a partner for Romania with a budget of 281,000 euros, and he will build the consortium also with Spanish team, with partners from Sweden, Austria, and Estonia. And so the overall budget will be 1.2 million, and it will allow to have a transnational research project. Next slide, please. Thank you. So that was already said by Magnus, but we would like to highlight it. It's very important that overall your project should be scientifically excellent. They should be multidisciplinary when relevant. They should demonstrate a transnational added value, engage with stakeholders, and also demonstrate political and societal relevance. So these expectations are at the level of the whole project and not at the level of each research partner. And all of that will be evaluated through specific assessment criteria to be sure that you mobilize also the right expertise in the project as a whole. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I can now give you some definition. Let's start with the transnational added value. So it's important that you demonstrate clear evidence of added value in your project, either directly in the countries involved in the research, or also you can demonstrate indirect value for example, from model applied to countries outside of the country involved in the research proposal. So I can give you a few examples. For example, transnational added value may include relevance to international policy statements or processes, legislative frameworks or management plans. Transnational added value may also be, for example, through the link of expertise and effort across national teams and across studied areas in your project. It could also be, for example, the comparison at the local level between researchers and stakeholders who are not used to work together. It can be also, for example, through the standardization of methods. So that's only a few examples to inspire you, but it's really your job to demonstrate how your project has clear evidence added value. If we continue about the definition, next slide, please. Thank you. So about transdisciplinarity. So here it's really this definition is used to speak about the involvement of stakeholders at a different stage of the project. So for instance, to define research objectives and strategies, facilitate inputs from non-academic stakeholders, or better incorporate the diffusion of learning produced by the research. So that's transdisciplinarity, and the interdisciplinarity refers to the involvement of multiple academic disciplines, so about natural sciences, social sciences and humanities, and technical sciences, and has, due to the topic of the call, but BiodivTransform, we really encourage you to mobilize all these disciplines in your project. So about the types of projects that we fund, so the proposal will be evaluated by an evaluation committee. The evaluation committee is composed of scientific experts and of policy management experts. So the proposal will be both judge on scientific excellence and also on the impact on policy and management issues. So the scientific members will evaluate if your project fits the call. So with the yes or no, they will also evaluate the novelty of the research in step 1. And the policy management expert will evaluate the impact of your proposal. And so depending on that, your proposal will be invited or not in step 2. So I can maybe give more information about the evaluation criteria. So as said, the scientific expert will evaluate the fit to the scope of the call and the novelty of the research. So for the novelty of the research, there are 2 sub-criteria. First, it's about how your project go beyond the state of the art and advanced knowledge, and also to what extent the proposed activities are creative and use original concepts. And the second sub-criteria is more about the research question, the clarity of the hypothesis. And for the policy management expert, they will evaluate the expected contribution of the proposed research to society, including policy. And they will also evaluate the transnational added value. So you have all the details of the evaluation criteria in the call documents, and I would like really to encourage you to go to read them. Now I will give the floor to my colleague Frédéric. He will give you more information about the guidance documents that you can use to build your project.
Hello, thank you very much, Céline, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm Frédéric Lemaitre. I'm the Operation Manager for Society and Policy Impact in Biodiversa Plus. I hope you can hear me well. So what Céline was introducing indeed is that you have these different criteria and especially one around societal impact with a number of sub-criteria. And what we know is that or the model we promote is one of engagement of stakeholders at different steps of your project design and implementation, and then the dissemination of outputs. And we do this because we believe that this is a constructive way to have science to guide policy and society. And I think all of us here are interested in seeing actual change for biodiversity. But we also know that it takes extra efforts to do this, that you cannot just dump scientific results on the table of a decision maker and expect him or her to fully grasp these, nor that these would be directly applicable to his or her context. So this is why we developed, and the last thing we know is that it's not part of the classical curricula of researcher to actually be given the opportunity to develop skills to do so. So we try to accompany you the best we can in grasping first what is the ambition behind this whole science society, science policy interfacing, and the criteria behind to propose credible plans, and also what it means in practice to do this involvement and this interfacing. So what you see here is three guides related to the social impact part. Next slide, please. I will go through the different ones. One key, next slide, please. One key publication is the Stakeholder Engagement Handbook from Biodiversa Plus. It provides methods for effective stakeholder engagement in a research project to better understand what are our expectations and the type of ambition you can set in your project, and also to provide tools and case studies and examples from past funded projects as to how to do this effectively. I would especially invite you to look also beyond the guide. You have the annexes, which are pretty hands-on with practical method notes and templates for doing stakeholder mapping and thinking about how you will engage stakeholders towards the achievement of the impact you want to see in your project. Now, next slide, please. We published also a specific guide around developing the policy relevance of your research proposals. It's being updated as far as the policy landscape is concerned, because some elements have moved a bit, but a lot of this context is still valid, and it relates to expectations that we have. What does it mean to explicit the policy relevance? A few keys or concepts to do so in your proposal. Also, as I said, we provide a broad overview of the policy landscape, trying to help researchers identifying what policy processes they should engage with based on what your research is proposing. And then you have a hands-on guidance with do's and don'ts, which were compiled from evaluators of past Biodiversa cores and what their experience in doing so, and also case studies from successful projects in terms of presenting policy relevance of their research. And finally, last point, which touches to this impact, but not only, because it's on the scientific side as well. This one is we have a guide around citizen science to explain a bit general methods and good practices in developing a citizen science component in your project where relevant. And also in there, we provide a directory to additional resources and tools you can mobilize to help you develop this case, as well as case studies from past projects. And last but not least, next slide. Behind this, there's an important element related to the management of data, and we have a specific guidance on this around how to develop data management plans for your proposals. Again, setting the right ambition in terms of open science and sharing outputs, and making sure you have a credible proposal in this respect to submit to us. Okay, I think that's all on my side at this stage. I really encourage you to go check out this guidance, because the key parts are indeed setting the right ambition and then credibilizing the plans and the approaches you will present in your proposal. And there you have a lot of keys on and examples on how to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred, and thank you indeed. Now you know what to put into your proposals for the evaluation criteria, and let's see about the eligibility rules. So first off, let's see the call schedule. We have opened the call on the 10th of September, and today, the 24th of September, we are having this webinar. So you can submit your pre-proposals by the 8th of November 2024. You will have the result of this first step by mid-February 2025. If you're invited to step 2, you will have to submit your full proposals by the 11th of April 2025. And by late September 2025, you would have the recommendation for funding and the results communicated. And then if your proposal is recommended for funding and is funded, it may start on the 1st of December 2025, the soonest, and the 1st of April 2026, the latest. Please do not wait until the last minute to submit. The submission time in each case is 3 p.m. Central European Time, so Paris time. When it comes to the general call process, the submission will take place on the electronic proposal submission system, which is already open. Once all the proposals are submitted, there is a general eligibility check and a funding organization eligibility check. And if the proposal passes these, then it will be evaluated by an independent evaluation committee regarding the 3 evaluation criteria at step 1, which is fit to the scope of the call, novelty of the research, and impact. Then around, as I said, mid-February, we will communicate the results and invite the applicants to submit full proposals. Also on the EPSS by the 11th of April. Then there is another round of eligibility check, also on the global and the funding organizational level. And if this is passed, then the evaluation committee is joined by external reviewers to evaluate the proposals on their excellence, the quality and efficiency of implementation, and impact. Once this is done, then the communication of the recommendations for funding is in late September. Please, for the eligibility, pay extra careful attention to formatting. It's an electronic submission, so there is a page limit, there is a font rule, there is a number and types of attachments are also limited, and also links and hyperlinks are not allowed at all. If you are interested to see how this looks like, then you can have a look at the indicated pre-proposal and full proposal application forms in the call documents available on our website. So this is the most recent list of participating funding organizations and countries. We have 37 funding organizations for 32 countries. And please keep on consulting the updated list, because not only do you find the national and regional funding rules, but also the contact points on this list. And as we said, we are aiming at a total funding of around 40 million euros. So the eligibility criteria and the consortium composition is very important. So the consortia is eligible with a minimum of 3 different countries participating in the call and requesting support from at least 3 different funding organizations. In addition, at least 2 eligible partners per consortium must come from different EU member states or associated countries participating in the call. And this last part is really important because only the ones that are listed on our website count within this. Not all the Horizon Europe associated countries listed by the European Commission count towards this. So if we take an example, for an eligible consortium, we have Portugal, Brazil, and Norway. So you have 3 countries participating in the call and 2 different countries that are either member states or associated countries. But if you look at the other example of a non-eligible consortium, you have Poland, Brazil, and Taiwan. You have 3 different countries participating in the call, but only 1 EU member state or associated country. So this consortium would then not be eligible. So when it comes to the proposal, the projects are expected to act as a transnational project, as Céline has described previously, and not as a mosaic of national projects. The duration is 3 years. And as far as possible, the partners should aim to participate in the project for its entire duration. However, if it's needed, positions of some team members can be requested for only part of the project's duration, as long as the member of each partner remains involved for the whole project. And also, the project must be written in English. When it comes to the researcher, the applicant is eligible and employed by an eligible organization according to the terms and conditions of the participating funding organizations to which they apply for support. So you can find this document on our website and see if your organization is eligible, or reach out to the contact point to confirm with them. Please take a good look at this because there can be very specific rules per country. The project coordinator, who is the person in charge of the proposal, can only participate as a coordinator in one proposal within this call. But other applicants, apart from the position of the coordinator, can participate in several proposals as long as this is within the funding organization's eligibility rules. So also pay attention to the fact that an individual researcher affiliated to several organizations cannot request funding from more than one funding organization in this call, and they will not be considered as 2 different partners within the consortium. If there is change needed, if you're invited to step 2, what are the changes that are allowed between the 2 steps? So in regards to content, the information given in the pre-proposal is binding, so no changes regarding this is allowed. There can be, however, some minor changes to improve your proposal as long as the objectives remain the same. These changes will be declared for the information of the call secretariat and the evaluation committee. You may change the budget as long as the rules of your funding organizations allow this. And it is the funding organization that decides if it needs a justification for it or not. In this case, the call secretariat, so as we don't need to be informed of this. Regarding the consortium composition, you may change this, but you cannot change it in a way that it would really affect the substance of the proposal. And you will have to indicate the changes that you're making. In any case, you cannot change at all the coordinator, except in the case of a force majeure. So really, if there is a really big problem, but otherwise this is not allowed. The request to be sent to the call secretariat at least 1 week before the deadline of submitting the full proposals, and it will be discussed in a case-by-case basis by the call steering committee and the funding organization involved. please, if you're requesting a change to the call secretariat, indicate the acronym of your proposal in the subject line of your email. Otherwise, we will have a really hard time identifying your proposal. Also, other than the coordinator that is not allowed to change, there are 2 changes of partners that is allowed if requested by partners and approved by the concerned funding organization. So the eligibility of the new partner must be also confirmed at least 1 week before the full proposal submission. And it must be requested first to the concerned funding organization with the call secretariat in copy, because this funding organization then will check the eligibility and will agree to it or disagree to it before integrating it to the EPSS. And also, please be aware that these 2 changes apply to partners and not team members or subcontractors. So what we consider a change is the addition, removal, or replacement of a partner, and this includes self-funded partners. So really, if you need to request a change, please indicate the acronym of your proposal in the email. Finally, we would like to talk about the widening option and for the changes allowed, because this year, this is a measure that has been implemented to encourage participation from countries and regions with smaller research communities or where the applications have been less successful at step 1. So this will be a process that is set up between step 1 and 2 of the evaluation process, where those projects that have been invited to step 2 on a voluntary basis will have the possibility to include 1 or several new research partners from undersubscribed funding organizations. But this should be relevant to the proposal, and the partners should be well integrated into the consortium. However, the addition of these partners from undersubscribed countries will not be considered as one of the maximum 2 changes, as long as it complies with the funding organization's roles and eligibility criteria. So please consult the call documents for the full process. And indeed, these were the global overarching eligibility criteria at the level of the call secretariat. However, you also have the funding organization's financial rules and eligibility criteria to respect, as each national and regional funding organization funds its own national regional research partner. You can find these roles with the contact points included on our website. And we strongly encourage you to reach out to the funding organization's contact points regarding eligibility criteria, because if one partner is not eligible, then the whole proposal can be considered ineligible and will not be evaluated unless the eligibility issues can be fixed without changing the substance of the proposal. So please don't hesitate to reach out to the funding organizations directly for their national and regional rules and eligibility criteria. Also, for building your consortium, we would like to underline that we have a very neat partner search tool that you can submit yourself either as a partner or as a project. As of now, we have 16 projects looking for a partner and 109 partners looking for a project. So if you submit your query, you will be visible on the platform and you can be connected by other applicants. And please look at the forms submitted through the user-friendly search function. You can search by partners or projects according to different criteria, country, discipline, keywords. This is already open and has been open. As you can see, we have several partners and projects that have submitted a query. So don't hesitate to be one of them or contact them. So
Can I just comment, because there were several questions around the search tool. First of all, you should we will provide the link, right? Or you have already in the chat, so people can find it. But there was a question whether if the consortium that you're intending to form or join is not in the search tool, does that mean it's not part of this call? This search tool, partner search tool and consortium search tool is as a tool for you to use. It's totally voluntary, yet it has nothing to do with the submission or eligibility of the projects. So this is just an aid for you to help find partners. So it is not connected to the application in any way, just to make that clear.
Thank you. Yes, that's exactly right. This is just to help you, but you don't have this. This is a possibility, not an obligation. Thank you, Agnes. And we have also reached the longer Q&A session regarding the eligibility rules and the evaluation criteria. Just before jumping in, I really invite everyone to look at the documents on our website. We probably have your answers there and our FAQ, but we will try to tackle them here right now.
Okay, so maybe I can pick up some questions. So there are a lot of questions about the participating funding organizations. So I think you received in the chat the list of participating funding organizations, because I see, like, for example, people asking for Colombia, Ukraine, etc. So maybe you can explain, we explained, Céline, our worksheet, if there are some partners outside of these participating funding organizations, can they apply?
Yes, so if you are from a country not in the list of participating countries in this call, you can still apply, but as a self-funded partners. And so here, you will need to provide in step 2 a letter of commitment to say that you have some reserve budget to participate in the project. So you can be self-funded partner, or another possibility is to be subcontracted by a partner, but this partner will need to check with the funding organization that subcontracting costs are eligible.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Céline. Maybe a question on the widening options. So the widening option appears as a very nice and responsible idea. How can consortia get in contact with each other to find possible new partners?
So you will have the possibility to use the research tool, the partner research tool between step 1 and step 2.
So yeah, there are like still 100 questions, so it's a bit hard to sort out which are the most interesting. So some people are, sorry. So there are some people asking about the eligibility of their partners, if like a private partner can be eligible, if partners from industry. There are also some questions if international organizations can be eligible. So could you a bit elaborate on this?
Yeah, so for the private companies or NGO or other partners like this, you need to check with your funding organizations if they are eligible or not. It will really depend on the national rules. At the level of the call, that's fine, they can participate, but you need to check with the funding organization, then they can be funded or not.
Okay. There are also some partners who are asking when the rules of the funding organization will be available. So we are aware that there are very few rules that are lacking.
Yeah, it's the case, for example, for Denmark or Spain. They should be available soon, this week or next week. We are still waiting for a few confirmation, but it should be published very soon.
Okay. So there are also some questions on partners because in one country sometimes there are more than one funding organizations and they're asking how to choose. And the second question may be linked to this. We were talking about the local funding organizations, so it's two questions.
Yeah, so sometimes in one country there are several funding organizations. So in this case, there are two possibilities. The first one is that you don't need to choose the funding organizations. On the EPSS platform, you will only select the country. And so in this case, it will be the funding organization who will allocate by themselves the project between them. For example, depending on their financial pressure and depending on which environment you address. So that's the first case. And on the second case, sometimes there are several funding organizations and you need to choose. And so here you will need to read the funding organization rules and to contact them to note which one you should select.
Okay, thanks, Céline. Maybe a question for Frédéric. Is the science, and Magnus maybe, is the citizen science approach a must to answer the call?
No. It's one approach you can mobilize amongst many others. It's relevant if it's relevant to your project and to the question you're answering or seeking to answer first. And then maybe if it's presented in the way it was presented, it's because to the difference of other methods, it does not only bring on the scientific side, but also on the societal and policy impact side. This is why it was highlighted the way it was, but you don't have to do citizen science.
Thank you, Frédéric. Also back to the call secretariat for now. If a consortium have two partners from the same country, so there are some questions related to this, like can two partners from the same country apply to the same proposal?
So that will depend on the eligibility rules from your national funding organization. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes not. You really need to check at the national level.
And I would say that it's the same as another question, like if the consortium have two partners from the same country, each one could ask for funding from different funding organizations. So that's still to ask to your like first to read the national rules and then to ask to your concern contact point at your national funding organization if it's possible. There is a question also on the success rate of the previous funding calls with Biodiversa.
Yeah, so on average, we fund between 30 to 36 projects for each call, and our success rate is between 15 to 16% for each call. But here it depends, of course, on how many proposals we receive in step one.
Okay, thanks. Maybe a question for Magnus. Are proposals with large geographic representation preferred, or is it okay to build a proposal that studies smaller ecoregions and in still several countries?
Yeah, no, it's again, this depends on the question. You have to demonstrate a transnational added value, as said. So it has to be more than just a national project. That is why we issue these joint calls with all that effort, extra effort that we put into this, trying to harmonize across the different funders. But other than that, if your question is, for example, even though you might be doing a more local or regional study, if the questions that you address and the answers that you hope to provide are relevant at a transnational scale, it could be upscaled, for example, that could also be relevant. And it's not like the more you have, the higher grades you get, but it has to be, we have a minimum of the number of countries that have to be involved, but your study areas, if you can argue that this is a perfect study area to study something that has a wider scope than just understanding the local peculiarities of a specific valley or lake, but rather could be extrapolated or expanded or scaled up in some way, either the research itself or the impact it might have, then then you have a good case, I would say.
Okay, thanks, Magnus. So there is a question if you can repeat the proposal success rate.
Yeah, it's between 15 to 16% for each call, but again, here it really depends on how many proposals we will receive in step 1.
Okay. And there are also some questions on the success rate per step and so on. So I will invite you if you want some more details on checking on the call brochures that we produced to have like a lot of details per call. So yes. Maybe a question again back to Magnus. Is a project which focuses on biodiversity within urban area is relevant to the call?
Biodiversity in the urban area?
Yes.
That is, that can be, I'm not going to say if your specific project is eligible and so on, but yes, we have no limitations on the realm or the type of ecosystem or how, to what degree the ecosystem has been degraded by human intervention, for example, as long as it is relevant for the focus of the goal. But there are also, you have to remember that there are the Driving Urban Transitions Partnership is also launching research calls. So you should look at the other calls that are being issued and choose the one which is most relevant for your question. So if the question is focused on the urban setting rather than the biodiversity, then perhaps that other call is more relevant for you. But we do not say that biodiversity stops where the tarmac starts, so to speak.
Okay, thanks a lot for your complete answer, Magnus. Coming back to the call secretariat and maybe to clarify, and I'm sure you already partly answered, Céline, the question was regarding the widening option. So the question was the participation of partners from undersubscribed funding organization. Is that mandatory? And is there a definition available somewhere?
Yes, so it's not mandatory. It's only on a voluntary basis that consortium will be able to add some other partners from industrial countries. It's really only on a voluntary basis. So you will have a list of countries who are undersubscribed between step 1 and step 2. We will communicate about that between the 2 steps.
Okay, thank you. And there is also a question the funding organization awards. In the funding organization awards, some there is it's in terms of submission. So, Céline, do you confirm that the submission is a joint submission be done with the PSS? And then do they have to do like a national submission, and how they can deal with different deadlines? It means that there is a deadline of Biodiversa Plus goal is different from the national deadlines.
Yes, so on the EPSS system, it's the coordinator who is responsible to submit the proposal or the full proposal. However, the research partner can also access to the EPSS, for example, to fill in information about their CV or the budget, administrative details. But it's really the coordinator who is responsible to submit the proposal on the EPSS. And some funding organization can also request a submission of the proposal or some administrative details on their national platform. So for that, you need to consult the national eligibility rules because it really depends on funding organizations. And it's true that sometimes there are different deadlines depending on the funding organization. So here you just need to meet the deadline of your funding organization.
Okay, thanks a lot. And maybe, Celine, if you can clarify, there are some questions on the budget. So some people would like to have some clarifications on how to build their budget, and is there like a maximum threshold per proposal, or if it's per partner?
So the maximum threshold is by partner, and this limit is defined by your funding organizations. So here again, you really need to consult the national eligibility rules because it's not at the level of the core secretariat, it's at the level of the national funding organizations.
Okay, thanks. And maybe if you can remind everybody, there are some questions, but like it was like a long time before, but just to confirm about the coordinator. What is the rule for the coordinator? Does the coordinator need to be eligible to participate in funding organizations? And what is the level of flexibility? Like, is it like a permanent work, a non-permanent work, etc.? There are like many questions about this.
Yeah, so the coordinator needs to be from an eligible organization and so be part from participating countries. And also the coordinators can be only involved in one project as coordinators. And except from this rule, applicants can be part of several projects if it is in line with the funding organization rules.
Okay, thanks. I'm checking all the questions. Maybe I will pick up the last question. Is there a maximum number of partners within the consortium?
So no, there are no maximum numbers of partners. That will really depend on the objective of your project. And you also need to think about how you will manage the coordination of the project. But there is no limitation, no rules about that.
Okay, thanks. And then there are some questions about like the content of the proposal. But so some people were asking if there are some rules about the number of work packages, if there are some rules in terms of roles of the coordinator, if there are some rules in terms of number of meetings of their consortium. So yes, it's a bit the question that I can see also.
So there are no rules about, for example, the number of work packages or number of meetings that you should organize. However, you should reserve a budget to attend 2 events from Biodiversa Plus. So in general, it's a kickoff meeting for the launch of the project. And after it's another event for the midterm review meeting or the final review meeting. It's not decided yet, but you should reserve a budget to attend this Biodiversa Plus events.
Okay, thank you, Céline. Then there is some question about the subcontracting. How does it work? For example, in the case of SME.
So for the subcontracting cost, you really need to check with the funding organization that's eligible cost. It will depend. Some funding organization cannot fund any subcontracting costs. And here on the EPSS, you have the possibility to add some subcontracting costs and also to explain which kind of subcontracting cost it will be.
Okay. Then a question about the average funding in past years. So, but I think you answered in your slide, but if you can repeat the average funding per project.
Yeah, so it's between 1.2 million and 1.5 million euros. But here again, it's only an average because it will depend on the numbers of partners involved in your project. It will also depend on the research field that you will do and the objective of your project. So it's only an average.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'm picking up the questions. So there is some questions. So some there are like some questions also. It's like also technical questions about like the co-funding. Like can they apply to another call? Can they have like some co-funding, etc.
So it's possible to apply to other call. However, please make sure that you don't submit twice your proposal. We want absolutely to avoid double funding. And sorry, what was the second question?
I think that's all. I think
Okay.
that was my question. I think I will come back to the call text. So back to Magnus. So there was a question. Does the proposal have to fulfill the definition of transformation used in the call for proposals in terms of ambition, paradigm shift, fundamental change, etc.?
Yeah, well, I would say, well, first of all, read the call text carefully because we do go into that into some depth. But this is not about the definitions as such. But I would say the further you go away from this concept, the better you'd have to argue for what you are aiming to do, if that is an answer. So you have to explain. I mean, we are open for alternative views and alternative approaches to things. That's part of transformation. That has to be part of transformation. So we certainly don't want to lock you in. But we think this definition is rather wide and could entail, what you would want to do. But you don't have to, fulfill exactly this definition. And if you would argue for something else, then that's up to you. But yeah, make your case. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Magnus. Like, if you have any questions that you would like to address, I'm still searching like some relevant questions. Just to tell you, just to remind you, to have really a careful look at the core documents and also to the FAQ, because I can see that a lot of questions can be answered thanks to the FAQ. And we would like to apologize because the link which is on the slide is not valid. We will change it in our slides that we will communicate afterwards.
Just because I see now two rather fundamental questions here among the.
Yes.
I mean, we have replied in the chat to 198 questions. There are still 144 in there. So please don't get angry if you didn't get an answer. We're trying to cover this, but do contact your national agencies to clear out any questions you might have. And I see one where this is in this case a Swedish funder, which is my organization, so I feel extra responsible here. It seems that the date indicated on our website is 1st of November, while for Biodiversa it's 8th of November. In this case, I think that this is just a mistake because we do not ask for registration in our system at stage 1, but the formal application is done to Biodiversa at the date and time that is stated in the call text. That's it. And then your funders, national or regional funders, might have additional, they won't do, and that's another question, they won't do any additional evaluation of the proposal. There is only one evaluation. There is one ranking list joint by all the funders, and this is what we will adhere to in both step 1 and step 2. The only thing that is done at the national level is the eligibility check to see that you fulfill the criteria for funding from them. So that will be, each partner will be checked to fulfill the criteria for the funding agencies, and they have different rules. So this is really crucial, and some of them do require that you pre-register or send in or contact them in advance just to make sure that you understand what this is about. But that is not the evaluation of the proposal. That is just the eligibility, checking that you fulfill the rules and regulations of the funder. So it's really important. You apply to Biodiversa for pre-proposals and full proposals. Thanks.
Thank you, Magnus, for all this information and clarification. So there are 3 minutes left. So we can pick up like 1 or 2 questions, and as explained by Magnus, we won't be able to answer to all questions. My colleagues are still on it, trying to answer. I think we answered like a large part because there are some like redundancy. Maybe if you can, because I see the question and it's quite important to understand, is the question is each proposal will be evaluated by the national organization. Is that right? So maybe Celine, if you can answer this one.
No, so the national funding organization will only check the eligibility of your proposal and full proposal, and the evaluation will be made by an independent evaluation committee.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Do you see any like key questions, Celine, Archie, Magnus, or Frederic, that we can address in the 2 last minutes? I still like a question again on the participating funding organization. For example, for UK, you need to check the list of the participating funding organization on the Biodiversa Plus website, and UK is not participating to this call this year. Any other key questions that we can address orally? Do you see any others?
There is a question on if the coordinator can be from outside the EU. Did we mention this?
Yeah, it's possible. It's not the coordinator doesn't need to be from the European Union, but it needs to be from a participating country with part of the call, and so also his organization needs to be eligible for funding from a funding organization.
Okay, thank you, Frederic.
Yeah, it's spotted earlier on one question about interdisciplinarity. And the question, I don't have it precisely, but the question was more or less, you need to have each and every discipline represented in the project consortia. I think the answer to this one, you should mobilize the disciplines needed to answer the question you are asking. That's for you to decide. And then what's for sure is that something that is not credibilizing in terms of an evaluation is if, for instance, you explain that one of the disciplines in your project is economy, but you have no economist in your consortium. Then, of course, it's only if this is relevant to the question you are seeking to answer, this is what will be evaluated. And I think there was something similar as to do you have to set up one work package on biodiversity, one work package on societal science, one work package on policy engagement, etc. There is no one good way to do this, so there's no actual answer to bring. Again, it depends on the project objectives and what you're trying to set up, and also it's about the credibility and convincing the evaluators of your proposals that these different disciplines and these different stakeholders, they will interact within your project, and that the project is just not a sum of parallel work streams, however you want to do this.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for this part. The information, Frederic. So I see that it's the end of our webinar. So I don't know if Magnus or the group secretariat would like to say any final words.
Yes, I think we have one more slide where we summarize all the information, all the different steps. Thank you, Archie. Just before, thanks. So in conclusion, what you need to do, first to check the call text, to check the scope of the call. Then you can build your consortium, so you can use the partner search tool to find partners, but it's not mandatory, it's only to help. Then you need to check the eligibility criteria of the call, so you will find them in the call documents. After that, you need to check the national regulation for all members of the consortium. So for that, you have a document which summarizes all the national funding rules. And if you have any doubt about that, you can contact the national funding contact point and the call secretariat. So after that, you can elaborate, of course, or in parallel, you can elaborate your proposal according to the call documentation. We encourage you to consult and to check the assessment criteria. And in the call documents, you have the proposal template. It's only for information because you need to submit your proposal on the EPSS platform by the 8th of November, 3 p.m. So it's you really need to submit your proposal on the EPSS, and that's the responsibility of the coordinator of each proposal. And so here you have the email address for the call secretariat. You have also the link for the national and regional contact points and their rules. You have also the email address in case you have some technical issue with the EPSS. And I would like also to remind you that this webinar was recorded, so the replay will be available on our website in a few days. And you will have also the PPT presentation available on Biodiversa Plus website. And of course, we wish you good luck to elaborate your proposal.
Thank you a lot for all the information. Would you like to conclude, Magnus?
Yes, well, very shortly, thank you so much for your great interest. We had far more than 900 participants and probably more than that in total. given that some people entered and joined later. And we have replied to 222 questions. There are still about 140 non-answered. Some are the same as those that have been answered, but please make sure to, again, read the documents and ask your national funders to ensure that you're clear. And in particular, I urge you to double check that each partner in the consortium is eligible for the funding, so you don't waste your time, and that you or modify the way your setup is done to accommodate to those rules. So with that, I thank you very much, and we wish you all the best.